So, surprisingly enough, I don't think anyone on this channel has ever realized that I like Pokemon. So I thought, you know what, I'd talk about things I like on here. I like Pokemon. Let's talk about the new Pokemon game, which I am addicted to. So, 10 days ago as of recording this video, the new Pokemon game Pokémon Legends Z-A I was released. I have almost 100 shinies in the game. The game does have its flaws. I mean, look at it, it looks terrible. It does look better than Scarlet Violet though, and the Sword and Shield Wild area. Oh, and Legends Arceus as a whole, in my opinion. But, you know, I want to talk about why I like the game, and I want to highlight, does the game have its issues? Absolutely. For anyone who has watched my videos before, I've talked about this. I like talking about things I like. I try to keep my videos more positive, and I'm gonna keep it that way. So, if you're coming here expecting me to talk about all of the flaws, sure, the game has its flaws, and sure, I could criticize them, which I'm going to throughout this video. I'm going to be criticizing parts of the game that I think are just really sad and really boring. In example, the shiny hunting. I think the shiny hunting in this game sucks ass. Yet I do it a lot, because I might as well. But, you know, let's start with the main stuff. I want to focus a little bit on the story first, and then I'm gonna move on to post-game stuff and shiny hunting and so on. So for anyone who doesn't know, in Pokémon Legends Z-A I, you play as a character who goes to visit Lumiose City, which is the Pokémon version of Paris. And when you get to Lumiose City, you run into a trainer called Tawny or Urbane, depending on the gender you pick for your character. Tawny or Urbane will essentially just be your rival throughout this game. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm gonna call them Tawny, just so you know. Tawny, when you reach Lumiose City, asks you for help with recording a promotion video for an hotel they stay at called Hotel C. So when you're having this discussion and start helping them with the video, you realize after a bit that your bag is stolen, and so you have to find it. When you track it down, you are put into a situation where you're forced to battle, but you don't have any Pokemon. In this situation, you are given your starter. So, for example, I picked Chikorita. The footage you're watching is from my second playthrough where I picked Totodile. But there's going to be some footage of my main playthrough sprinkled in there, just so that you're aware. After all of this happens, it turns nighttime and you are put into what's called a battle zone. A battle zone is an area where trainers go to compete and battle against each other in what's called the Z-A I Royale. The Z-A I Royale is essentially a battle royale where you collect enough points through beating other trainers to get a ticket so that you can go to your rank up match. When you win your rank up match, you rank up. Yeah. That's literally it. The ranks go all the way from Z to A, hence the name Legends Z-A I. As you are in the battle zone, every trainer around there will attack you. And this happens even when your trainer is there and isn't a part of the Z-A I Royale. Which turns into this really funny moment where Floette almost kills everyone. And that is what I call a scare tactic. After this, you visit Hotel Z, which is owned by AZ from Pokémon X and Y, considering that this is a sequel to Pokémon X and Y, which also happens to be the place you stay at throughout the story. Now, I could continue deep diving into the story, but I really don't want to because the story is actually pretty good, and I highly recommend playing through the game, at least for the story in itself. Pokemon games normally don't have the deepest story, and I actually think the story in this one is genuinely really enjoyable, and I thought it was a really good story for being Pokemon. The story does have its happy moments, its funny moments, and its sad moments, and I think all of those are kinda needed to build a good story, at least in my opinion. And as you travel through the city of Lumiose, you will end up meeting different Pokemon, seeing different Mega Evolutions, which yes, Mega Evolutions are back, and you essentially have to quell different Mega Evolutions that will essentially just kinda go rogue, which is a big part of the story later on into the game. Something I have to say that I was really worried about with the game is the world. You know, I just talked about the story and how I really like it, and how it really has its moments. But when I looked at the game, I kind of thought I would like the story to begin with anyways. I always thought X and Y had a lot more you could explore, especially with the story. Now, it did go in a direction that I didn't really want to see. I wanted to see something that showcased more of the past of Kalos, like for example the war 3,000 years ago, and you know, everything that happened surrounding AZ back then. Spoilers for Pokemon X and Y, I guess. I'm sorry, the game is 10 years old. And something that I really enjoyed, I also doubted I would enjoy, was the world. I am not a big fan of games that are primarily set in an urban city, but I really like the city in this game. It is easy for cities in games to become very repetitive, and I was worried that would be the case, especially considering that Lumiose City doesn't look that big in this game. And it really isn't. But with the way exploration works in this game, how you can run around the different rooftops as well as the ground, and go to the different wild zones to catch wild Pokemon, and even find wild Pokemon within the city in itself. And there's an entire sewer system to explore. Even though the sewers aren't really that big, it's still quite a bit, and it's a lot more than I expected. Especially with how the game opens up with giving you more and more things to explore throughout the game's story. Everything isn't available to you at the start, but it is made in a way to where it actually makes sense that everything isn't available to you at the start. Technically it is, but technically it isn't. I don't really want to spoil it because, again, I kind of recommend people giving it a shot if they are interested in the game. And again, I really like the game. If you like Legends Arceus, you would probably like this game. Mostly because it's kind of a way better game than Legends Arceus, aside from one aspect. Whilst the world is really fun to explore and there's a lot of things to figure out and find, it sure does have its shortcomings. Some in its Pokédex. A lot of the Pokemon in this game are Pokemon with Mega Evolution, and I get that they want to have as many Mega Evolutions as possible in the game, because it's kind of a key feature. But it's a bit annoying when I'm pretty sure a good chunk of the decks are just Pokemon that can Mega Evolve. It made the game a bit linear in that you knew what you would be able to get and wouldn't be able to get, which was a bit of a shame. Which was my main complaint with this game when it came to the decks. I still think it's a really cool dex, and I love a lot of the Pokemon that are in the game. I love that you get to choose if you want to use an Aggron, for example. I love Aggron. I think it has a great design, and it's a Pokemon I really like using. However, I wasn't surprised to see one because it's a Pokemon that has a Mega, and I wish there were a bit more Pokemon that weren't just Megas in the game. However, that is a nitpick, and if that's not an issue to you, that is completely fine. It's a nitpick, and it's a very small thing to complain about. Generally, the dex is really fun and has a lot of fun Pokemon to use, and because of that, I think it's a really fun game. And now we're also getting to another one of my complaints. This is actually one of the main ones. I have done a lot of shiny hunting in this game. I think shiny hunting is really fun. Normally, shiny hunting in this game is the definition of the most boring and the laziest way to do shiny hunting ever in Pokemon, in my personal opinion. The fact that the main way to shiny hunt is by resetting an area, it gets a bit boring. Here's footage of me literally using a macro to reset an area because I could do it manually for hours on end, but I'd rather have a macro do it so I can actually do something with my time. Compared to, for example, Legends Arceus, where exploring different outbreaks, for example, which is normally where you would shiny hunt, had a lot more enjoyment to it because you would go to a different area and you would explore the area to see what Pokemon would be shiny, instead of just resetting at a bench. Literally. The shiny hunting methods in the game really motivate you to just essentially AFK hunt, and I think that's such a boring thing to do. Now, I have done AFK hunts in the past, such as the Fluttermane hunt in Pokemon Scarlet. However, they have never been my main option to hunt because I enjoy being more active. I'm probably one of the few people who actually enjoy the Masuda method, and if you ask me, I'd rather do Masuda method any day of the week than resetting at a bench in Legends Z-A I. And I think that's such a shame for someone who really enjoys shiny hunting normally. Now, I do already have a lot of shinies in this game, so I genuinely should not really be complaining because it's really easy to shiny hunt because you can just AFK hunt pretty much anything. But I don't think it's satisfying. Most of the time, my reaction to seeing a shiny, unless it's something very specific I'm hunting for, is just, oh look, a shiny. Whoa. It's nowhere near the reaction I would have in example hunting an Alolan Vulpix through Masuda method when I was breeding Pokemon in Pokemon Sun. Sure, there is every now and then where I do have a reaction, such as with this Tyrant. Anyone else but you on a lonely... Oh my god! Night. That's a 1 in 4,000. Let's go! I was not expecting it at all. Hi YouTube. How you doing? Oh, look at this little dude. Look at him. But that's also, again, an AFK hunt. All I did was set my controller to press A on turbo until I essentially just got it. I would just do that with 80 fossils and then reset the game and do it again with another 80 fossils. Which is really just sad that that's the way you shiny hunt them. Sure, Tyrant is a 1 in 4096, so it is technically a full-out shiny, so it'd take a long time to do, but it's still just pressing A. I've never been a fan of soft reset hunts, but even soft resets hunts are more fun than this because you're doing more. So yeah, essentially my main complaint is just shiny hunting is way too easy and way too boring. And that comes from me as a shiny hunter. I do actually have a video though that's going to be going up on 3 Goons with my first 100 shinies on the game. So check that out once that's released. I don't know when it will be, okay? With my shiny hunting complaints aside, we can focus a bit more on the combat. The combat is obviously a focus of the game, especially considering that a key part of the game is the battles at night, and I really like it. I am a really big JRPG fan. I'm a really big RPG fan in general, and I love action RPG combat. I think Xenoblade is one of my favorite games of all time because of that. I think the Xenoblade games are some of my favorite games of all time because of that, but I also really like turn-based, so I was a bit unsure if I would like this combat more or less. And in all honesty, I find myself kinda meh about it. I think it is better for the gameplay in itself and for the games in themselves. I think it's better to have a more active combat system, and it works better with Pokemon as a game, but I really am a sucker for turn-based, and I think turn-based is more fun in the long run for someone like me. But the combat that we got in this game does fit Pokemon as a whole way better, so if you like this type of combat more, then you'll really like this. It does feel a lot more like the anime and with how everything seems to work in the anime in itself. Now let's focus a bit more on the music. The music is amazing. I love the music in this game. And I am so happy to hear that YouTuber Insane in the Rain actually took part in helping out with the music. Now, there is one complaint. Why is there only one overworld theme? Like one theme for exploring the city in itself? I am so tired of listening to the Lumiose city theme. I would probably not be having music on in the game if it wasn't for the fact that there is a shiny sound for shinies. And speaking of, I have actually seen some pretty odd complaints about this game. Let's focus on them shortly. I want to talk about the complaints about shiny sounds and the way shinies work in this game. I saw someone complain that shiny sounds, the fact that shinies have sparkles around them, and that they have the little sound that they had in Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, the little sparkling sound, on top of the color palette being different, is a bit much. And I gotta say, I don't really agree. As someone who doesn't have perfect vision, I have glasses, my eyesight is pretty poor, I think it's just nice for people that have issues with their vision, more so than me, and especially for people that are colorblind, that there is some way for them to actually get help with seeing things. It is very easy for someone with issues seeing. For someone who has visual impairments, it's really nice to have an actual audio cue to help you out. And the fact that the sparkles also come from the direction of the shiny itself, it makes it a bit easier to locate for people with issues seeing things. And I think these type of features that are generally accessibility features are just good in general for the game. And if you complain about there being accessibility stuff in the game you play, then maybe you shouldn't be playing that game. Now, I do understand people who think it should be an option and it should be in settings, and that is fine. That is fair enough if you want to have an option to turn it off, which is where we get to the next complaint that I've seen. Now, before this next one, I just want to say spoiler for about the next minute or so. I'll put a timestamp for whenever the spoiler is over. So if you want to skip the spoilers, skip to the timestamp on the screen. Something I want to talk about is that I've seen someone complain about the fact that you skip ranks throughout the game's story. You specifically skip from rank V to rank F. And I think this is something that genuinely is a blessing in disguise. For anyone like me who kind of expected a grind, I was worried it would be a bit too much of a slog. I kinda did think it was getting a bit repetitive at the point where you skip the ranks. And I am so happy that they skipped the ranks and actually gave us interesting characters to fight instead of the more generic characters that you fought before that. Every single key fight, every single rank up has some type of interesting fight going on before the rank up. You don't fight generic Mr. Sack again. you fight actually interesting characters. And I think that means so much more than anything else throughout the story. If we skip ranks for the sake of making the game and the story more enjoyable, then I think that is perfectly fine. I've seen people say that they feel like that takes away from the game. I don't think so. Also, another reason to always skip ranks is to show that your character has a natural knack for battling. If the city and the world was a bit bigger and there was more to explore, it would have made more sense to do so. But with it not being that much bigger, it doesn't make sense to have that many ranks, because then you would just end up slogging through battles all the time. Which is where we get to my next criticism. Which is where we get to my next complaint. Maxing out the tasks that Mabel gives you. At the start of the game, Mabel, the professor's assistant, gives you different tasks to complete, and in turn you get different rewards. The last of which is the shiny charm, which is pretty big for people like me who do shiny hunting, because it increases the odds quite a bit. And I was having a lot of fun playing through the game and completing these missions until I saw one of them. It would have been fine if this mission wasn't required to complete the dex, but if you're like me and completed every other task trying to avoid it, you would end up with 100 points more required for the shiny charm, which sucked. The mission in question is winning 1,000 battles. Now, I would have gotten it and I would have understood it more if it was like 500 or so. 1,000 is kind of crazy to ask though. To put in perspective, after beating the main story, I checked how many battles I had. And after beating the main story, I had 186 battles won. 186. That is less than a fifth of the total amount of battles. This means that I had to do over 800 battles to complete the dex in the post game. Now, if you sprinkled these in throughout the main game itself, you would probably not have had the issue of feeling like you have to do 800 battles in a row after beating the game. But I didn't know that this was gonna be a thing. I got the game on launch day, so I wasn't looking things up because I didn't want to get spoiled, and I actually wanted to play through the game and experience the game as much as possible without seeing what other people were experiencing in their playthroughs of the game, which is why I got so immensely disappointed at this. It really feels like Game Freak expected people to do a lot more battles than you actually have to do. I really enjoy the combat system in this game, but it doesn't help the combat system when it gets repetitive because you have to do 800 battles in a row. Sure, I could explore and do other things at the side, but I really wanted to get the shiny charm so I could explore and get more shinies. But that is just my opinion. And hey, if you don't agree, you don't agree, and that's completely fine. But with all of this said, I really truly enjoyed this game. My main playthrough of the game was super fun, and I've been really enjoying my second playthrough of the game, which is again what you've been watching most of throughout this video. Mostly because it's early game and I don't want to spoil late game for people. I wasn't at home when I got the game, and so I didn't record a lot of my early game from my main save, and it just doesn't make sense for me to start a new save as my main save after essentially completing the game and having already started shiny hunting and completing the dex. It just kind of made sense to create a new save instead, especially since I was probably anyways going to do it at some point. With all of this being said, if you watch this video and you have played the game yourself, what did you think of it? I know my buddy Oak from 3 Goons actually really enjoyed it as we were playing it together, and it was a lot of fun playing it with him. I really wish we could do that again. I might ask him if he wants to come over at some point and we just play through the games again whilst next to each other. One of my favorite things with the game was actually when we were sitting next to each other and I heard the shiny sparkles, and I was really surprised because it didn't come from my switch, it came from his, and I'm generally the one with more luck. And I look over at him and I see a panic on his face as he fails a shiny Badoo because he doesn't have any Pokeballs. Well, but all jokes aside, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you have a great and wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Bye.